Your children are too loud.
Ma'am, everything is fine. Please keep your tone respectful.
I, 35F, always knew our family vacation was a bad idea. My husband, Mark, had been optimistic. He thought it would be a chance for my mother, Eleanor, to connect with our children, Leo and Mia. I knew better. My mother didn't connect with people. She acquired them, polished them, and placed them on a shelf to be admired. If they failed to shine brightly enough, they were criticized until their light went out completely. This trip was her latest project. She had paid for everything, a fact she mentioned at every opportunity. It was a 5-star resort, the kind with quiet pools and even quieter guests. It was the last place on earth I would have chosen for a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. But the choice was not mine. It was never mine. The first few days were a tightrope walk. I was constantly on edge, shushing the children's laughter, turning their excited shouts into whispers. Mark tried to help, but he didn't have the years of training I did. He didn't recognize the subtle tightening of my mother's jaw or the slight narrowing of her eyes that preceded an attack. He just saw his mother-in-law being quiet. I saw a predator gathering her strength. I spent every moment trying to be the perfect daughter with the perfect family. It was exhausting. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for the inevitable moment when our imperfect, noisy, joyful reality would puncture her perfect, silent, miserable fantasy. I didn't have to wait long. We were by the main pool. It was large and blue and surrounded by people reading books in shaded lounge chairs. Leo and Mia were in the shallow end, splashing each other. They were not screaming. They were not running. They were giggling, their happy sounds barely rising above the gentle lapping of the water. I was watching them, a small, genuine smile on my face for the first time all week. I felt Mark's hand on my back, a silent gesture of support. He thought we were finally having a good moment. He was wrong. My mother appeared at the edge of our cluster of chairs. She stood with her hands on her hips, her face a mask of pure disgust. She didn't speak to me at first. She just stared at my children, her disapproval a physical force in the warm air. The other guests started to notice. A woman lowered her sunglasses to get a better look. A man put down his book. My mother thrived on an audience. She waited until she had their full attention. Then she turned to me. Her voice was not a whisper. It was sharp and loud, designed to carry across the water. "Sarah," she snapped, her tone dripping with venom, "your children are too loud." My smile vanished. My body went cold. It felt like every drop of blood had rushed from my head. I looked at Leo and Mia, who had stopped splashing and were now looking at their grandmother with wide, confused eyes. Their laughter was gone. The joy was gone. All that was left was the heavy, suffocating silence she had wanted all along. "This is a place for respectable people," she continued, her voice rising with self-righteousness. "You need to control them. They are being disruptive." I opened my mouth to defend them, to say they were just being children, but my throat was tight. The shame was instant and overwhelming. She had done this to me my whole life. She could make me feel small and wrong with just a few words. Mark stood up. "Eleanor, that's not fair," he started to say. "They are just playing." "Oh, you would defend this," she said, waving a dismissive hand at him. "You have no standards." My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The public humiliation I had been dreading. I felt the eyes of everyone at the pool on us. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to disappear. But then, something unexpected happened. A man approached our little drama. He was older, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He was dressed in the resort's official polo shirt. I recognized him as the owner, Mr. Harrison. He often walked the grounds, speaking to guests. My mother saw him coming, and her expression shifted. She put on a pained, martyred smile. She was preparing to win him over, to get him to validate her complaint. She wanted him to scold me, to prove to everyone that she was right and I was a failure. Mr. Harrison stopped beside my mother. He did not look at me or Mark. He looked directly at her. He smiled a gentle, unwavering smile. "Ma'am," he said, his voice pleasant but firm, carrying just as far as hers had. "I was just watching those two from my office." He gestured toward Leo and Mia, who were now clinging to the side of the pool, looking scared. "The sound of happy children," Mr. Harrison said, his voice full of genuine warmth, "is the best music this place could ask for. They are a delight. We are lucky to have them." My mother's jaw dropped. The martyred smile evaporated, replaced by a look of pure shock. She was speechless. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my mother utterly and completely silenced. He had not just disagreed with her. He had dismantled her entire premise. He had taken her side of the argument and declared it invalid. He had sided with the noise, with the joy, with my children. In that moment, the power dynamic of my entire life shifted on its axis. The silence that followed was not the oppressive silence she created. It was the stunned silence of her defeat. I finally let out the breath I had been holding all week. My mother stared at Mr. Harrison, her face a mixture of confusion and rage. She could not compute what had just happened. In her world, authority figures always agreed with her. People in charge were supposed to enforce her rules of quiet, sterile perfection. Mr. Harrison had not only failed to do that, he had celebrated the very thing she was trying to extinguish. She sputtered for a moment, trying to find words. "Well, I just think that other guests," she began, gesturing vaguely at the people around the pool. Mr. Harrison's smile did not waver. "Our other guests come here to relax," he said smoothly. "And I find nothing more relaxing than seeing a family enjoy their time together. Your grandchildren are making beautiful memories. That is what this resort is for." He then turned his warm gaze to Leo and Mia. "You two keep having fun," he said to them directly. "Your laughter is welcome here." Leo gave a small, hesitant smile. Mia peeked out from behind his shoulder. The fear in their eyes began to recede, replaced by the simple relief of a child who has been told they are not in trouble. My mother, however, looked as though she had been slapped. She had been publicly contradicted by the one person whose authority here was absolute. She could not argue with the owner of the resort. She could not claim he didn't know the rules. He was the rules. She turned on her heel and stalked back to her lounge chair, her back ramrod straight. She snatched her book but did not open it. She just sat there, radiating fury. Mark squeezed my shoulder, a look of stunned admiration on his face. I gave him a weak smile, my body still trembling with adrenaline. I knelt by the side of the pool. "It's okay, sweethearts," I said softly to my children. "You heard the man. You can play." They looked at me, then at each other, and slowly, the giggles returned. The splashing started again, a little more subdued than before, but it was there. The spell was broken. Mr. Harrison gave me a small, discreet nod before he walked away, resuming his tour of the grounds as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. A line had been drawn in the sand, and for the first time, my mother was on the wrong side of it. I knew the rest of this vacation was not going to be a peaceful truce. It was going to be a war. And I, for the first time, felt like I might have a chance of winning. Later that afternoon, the inevitable confrontation occurred. My mother waited until Mark had taken the children to get ice cream, leaving me alone to pack up our pool towels. She marched over to my chair, her face like a thundercloud. "I want to talk to you," she said. It was not a request. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "How dare you embarrass me in front of all those people? In front of the owner of this establishment?" I stared at her, genuinely confused. "How did I embarrass you?" I asked. "I didn't say a word. You were the one yelling about my children." "Do not play games with me, Sarah," she snapped. "You orchestrated that entire scene. You put him up to it." I almost laughed. The accusation was so absurd, so deeply rooted in her own manipulative worldview that it was almost comical. She could not imagine a world where someone would genuinely disagree with her. The only possible explanation in her mind was that I had somehow conspired with a man I had never met to humiliate her. "Mother, that's ridiculous," I said. "I have never spoken to Mr. Harrison before in my life. He saw what was happening, and he intervened. He was being kind." "Kind?" she scoffed. He was undermining me, and you loved every second of it. I saw the look on your face. You were gloating. This was her classic technique. Accuse, deflect, and then reinterpret my reaction as a malicious act. I had seen her do it 1,000 times, but today was different. Something inside me had hardened. I wasn't gloating, I said, my voice firmer now. I was relieved. I was relieved that for once someone stood up for my children and told them that it's okay to be happy. Something you have never done. Her eyes widened in fury. I give your children everything, she exclaimed. I paid for this entire trip. I bought them those swimsuits they are wearing, and this is the thanks I get. You accuse me of not wanting them to be happy? Wanting them to be happy and wanting them to be quiet props for your vacation are two very different things, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. They were true, and I was tired of hiding the truth. She recoiled as if I had struck her. You are an ungrateful, spiteful child, she spat. You have always been this way, always trying to ruin things for me. I stood up, gathering the towels in my arms. I was done with this conversation. I was done with her. No, I said, looking her directly in the eye. I'm not. I'm just a mother protecting her kids. You should try it sometime. I walked away without another word, leaving her standing there, speechless for the second time in one day. The victory felt hollow, though. I hadn't won anything. I had just survived another battle. As I walked back toward our room, a strange thought entered my mind. Why was she so obsessed with this place? Why was the opinion of Mr. Harrison so devastatingly important to her? It was more than just a rich person wanting good service. It felt personal. Deeply personal. And I suddenly had a feeling that there was a lot more to this story than just my children's laughter. There was a secret here, and I was beginning to think it had everything to do with my mother. That evening, at dinner, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. My mother was giving me the silent treatment, a punishment she had perfected over decades. She spoke to Mark, to my father, Richard, who had spent the day golfing, and even to the children in a tone of forced, sugary sweetness. But to me, I was invisible. My father, a master enabler, tried to smooth things over. So, Sarah, he said, his voice overly cheerful, did you and the kids have a nice afternoon at the pool? I saw my mother's hand tighten around her wine glass. Yes, Dad, I said, meeting his gaze. We had a lovely time. The owner, Mr. Harrison, even came by to say hello. He's a very kind man. My father's smile faltered. He glanced nervously at my mother. Oh, he said. That's nice. Yes, it was, I continued, pushing a little further. Mother was just saying how important it is to make a good impression here. She seems to really care what the management thinks. My mother shot me a look that could have curdled milk. Well, of course, she said, breaking her silence to address the table, but not me. This is a place of high standards. It is important to show that we belong here. There it was again. That word. Belong. It was a strange choice of words. Not that we enjoyed it here, or that we appreciated the luxury, but that we belonged here. As if our presence was something that needed to be proven or justified. Mark, picking up on the weird vibe, chimed in. Eleanor, you've been talking about this resort for years, he said, trying to be diplomatic. What is it you love so much about it? My mother seemed to preen at the question, the attention shifting back to her. Oh, it's just a special place, she said with a wave of her hand. It has a certain history, a certain class. Not just anyone can appreciate it. She looked pointedly at me as she said the last part. I decided to keep digging. Did you and Dad come here a lot when you were younger? I asked. My father looked at my mother, a flicker of something I couldn't identify passing between them. No, he said quickly. This was always a bit out of our price range back then. Your mother just admired it from afar. Admired it from afar, I repeated slowly. That's interesting. My mother's patience finally snapped. What are you getting at, Sarah? She demanded, her voice sharp again. Why all these questions? Are you writing a book? I'm just curious, I said innocently. It's a beautiful place. I'm interested in its history. Well, the history is that it is a fine establishment, and we are guests here, she said, her tone final. And we should act like it. The conversation was over, but my mind was racing. My father's quick denial, my mother's defensiveness. There was something she was hiding. Something connected to this resort, and I was going to find out what it was. The next day, I made a plan. Mark agreed to take the kids to the beach club for the morning, giving me some time to myself. My mother and father had planned a trip into the nearby town to go shopping, an activity they knew I disliked. It was the perfect opportunity. Once they were gone, I walked to the main lobby. It was a grand, airy space with high ceilings and portraits of stern-looking men on the walls. I assumed they were the founders, the Harrisons. I found a quiet seating area and took out my phone. I started with a simple search for the resort's name and history. The first few results were just travel articles and reviews, all praising its exclusivity and timeless elegance. I dug deeper, looking for official records or news archives. I found the resort's corporate website, which had a small About Us section. It mentioned that the resort was founded in 1975 by a man named Charles Harrison and was now run by his son, James Harrison. That would be the Mr. Harrison I had met. I kept scrolling, looking for anything that might connect to my mother. I refined my search, adding the name of the local town and looking for news archives from the mid-1970s. It took a while, but I finally found a digitized local newspaper article from the grand opening of the resort. The headline was splashy, talking about the new jewel of the coastline. There were several photos. One was of Charles Harrison cutting a ribbon. Another was of the governor shaking his hand. And then there was a large, grainy photo of the attendees at the opening night gala. I zoomed in, my heart starting to beat a little faster. The photo was filled with people in formal wear, laughing and drinking champagne. I scanned the faces, not really expecting to find anything. And then I saw her. In the background, standing near a service door, was a young woman in a waitress uniform. She was not smiling. She was looking at the guests with an expression of intense, hungry longing. It was my mother. She was maybe 19 or 20 years old, but it was unmistakably her. I stared at the image, my mind reeling. My father had said they admired it from afar. He hadn't lied, exactly. He just left out the part where my mother's admiration came from the other side of the service tray. She hadn't been a guest. She had been staff all these years. All her talk about class and standards and belonging, it was all a desperate attempt to distance herself from this. This was the secret. This was why she was so terrified of not measuring up. This resort wasn't just a vacation spot for her. It was the scene of her deepest shame, and she had returned as a wealthy guest to prove to herself and to the world that she had finally escaped her past. My children's innocent laughter wasn't just noise to her. It was a threat. It was a crack in the perfect facade she had spent a lifetime building. Any imperfection, anything that drew the wrong kind of attention, risked exposing her as an imposter. It risked reminding the world and Mr. Harrison that she was not one of them. She was just the girl who used to clear their plates. The realization settled in my stomach like a cold, hard stone. This wasn't about me at all. It was all about her. And I was tired of being a pawn in her pathetic, lifelong game of pretend. I saved the image to my phone. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew it was a powerful piece of the truth. It was leverage. For a moment, I felt a surge of triumph. I'd figured it out. I had uncovered her great, dark secret. But the feeling quickly faded, replaced by a profound sadness. How exhausting it must be to live like that, to spend your entire life running from who you are, to build a fortress of wealth and status around a core of pure insecurity. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the look on my children's faces by the pool, the way she had so casually snuffed out their joy to protect her own fragile ego. And my pity vanished, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. She had made her choices. Now I was going to make mine. When Mark and the kids returned, I showed him the photo. He stared at it for a long time, his brow furrowed. "Wow," he said softly. "So that's what this is all about." "That's what this is all about," I confirmed. "She's not a snob. She's just terrified." "So what are you going to do?" he asked, looking at me. "Are you going to confront her with this?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said slowly. "Not yet. A photo from 50 years ago isn't enough. She'll just deny it. She'll say it's someone who looks like her. She'll call me a liar and a troublemaker. I need more than that. I need something undeniable." "Like what?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I have an idea where to find it." My mind went back to Mr. Harrison. He had said he remembered the sound of happy children from his office. That meant he grew up here. He would have been here in 1975. He might remember a young waitress with a hungry look in her eyes. He might know more than just what was in a grainy newspaper photo. He might know the rest of the story. I knew I had to talk to him, but it had to be done carefully. I couldn't just walk up and ask him if he remembered my mother, the waitress. I needed a reason, a pretext. My opportunity came the next morning. I saw Mr. Harrison near the rose garden speaking with one of the gardeners. I took a deep breath and walked over. I waited patiently until he was finished. When he turned and saw me, he smiled that same kind smile from the other day. "Good morning," he said. "I hope your family is enjoying the day." "We are, thank you," I said. "And I wanted to thank you again for what you did at the pool. It meant a lot to me and to my children." "It was my pleasure," he said. "I meant every word. This place can feel a bit stuffy sometimes. A little life is always a good thing." This was my opening. "It's a beautiful resort," I said, gesturing to the perfectly manicured gardens. "You must be very proud of it. My mother has been talking about it for years." "Oh?" he said, his interest piqued. "Is she a frequent guest?" "Not exactly," I said, choosing my words carefully. "She said she used to visit a long, long time ago, when your father was running the place. Her name is Eleanor." I watched his face closely. For a fraction of a second, something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of recognition. But it was more than that. It was guarded. He knew the name. "Eleanor," he repeated slowly, thoughtfully. "I'm afraid I don't recall the name. We've had many thousands of guests over the years." He was lying. It was a polite, professional lie, but it was a lie nonetheless. He remembered her. I was sure of it. But he wasn't going to tell me why. I had to push, but gently. "Oh, that's a shame," I said, feigning disappointment. "She has such vivid memories of this place. She always spoke of your father with such admiration. She said he ran a very tight ship." Mr. Harrison's expression softened slightly. "My father was a great man," he said. "He believed in excellence, but he also believed in people." "She said he was very discerning," I continued, fishing for a reaction, "that he had very high standards for his guests and his staff." I'd hit a nerve. The mention of staff was the key. His professional mask slipped for just a moment. "He did," he said, his voice a little cooler now. "He demanded the best from everyone who worked here." "I'm sure he did," I said. I decided to take a risk. "She must have been very young when she was here. Maybe she didn't leave much of an impression." I paused, then added, "Or maybe she did." Mr. Harrison was silent for a long moment. He studied my face, as if trying to understand my motives. He was no fool. He knew this wasn't an idle chat. He knew I was looking for something. "Your mother," he said finally, his voice low and serious. "Why are you asking about her?" It was time for the truth. Or at least, part of it. "Because my mother has spent her entire life creating a story about who she is," I said, my voice quiet but intense. "A story about perfection and status and belonging, and she uses that story to hurt people, to hurt my children, to hurt me. She uses this resort as a prop in her story, and I need to understand why. I need to know the truth, not her version of it. The real version. He listened patiently, his gaze never leaving mine. When I was finished, he let out a long, slow sigh. "I see," he said. He looked around the garden, as if gathering his thoughts. My father was a good man, but he was not a sentimental one. He had a rule: one chance. If you worked for him, you got one chance to prove you were honest and hardworking. If you failed that test, you were gone. No second chances. My blood ran cold. "And my mother," I whispered. "Did she fail the test?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Eleanor," he said, the name finally coming out with its full weight of memory. Yes, I remember her now. A very ambitious young woman. She worked here for one summer, in the dining room. He confirmed it. The photo was real, but I could tell there was more. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "She was let go," he said simply. "My father fired her himself." "Why?" Mr. Harrison hesitated. "It was a long time ago," he said, a hint of evasion in his tone. "The details are not important." "They are important to me," I insisted. "Please, I need to know." He seemed to wrestle with himself for a moment. He was a discreet man, protective of his family's business and its history. But he had also seen my mother in action. He had seen her cruelty firsthand. Perhaps that is what tipped the scales. "It was a matter of dishonesty," he said finally. "Small things at first. A silver spoon from a table setting, a guest's forgotten scarf, things that could be explained away as accidents. But then it became more." He paused, and I held my breath. "My father was a collector of antique maps," he continued. "He had a very rare, very valuable one framed in his private office. It was his pride and joy. One day it went missing. There was an investigation. It was all very quiet, very discreet. My father hated scandal. In the end, they found the map. They found it in Eleanor's locker, rolled up and hidden in her spare uniform. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just that she was a waitress. It wasn't just that she was from a humble background. She was a thief. She had been fired for stealing. My father was furious," Mr. Harrison went on, his voice a low murmur. "Not just about the map, but about the betrayal. He had given her a chance, an opportunity, and she had thrown it back in his face. He could have called the police. It would have ruined her life. But he didn't. He was a kind man despite his strict rules. He let her go quietly. He made her promise she would never set foot on this property again. He told her if she ever came back, he would make sure the whole world knew what she had done." I felt sick. "But she did come back," I said. "She's here now." "Charles Harrison passed away 10 years ago," Mr. Harrison said with a sad smile. "His threat died with him. I suppose she felt it was safe to return. She probably assumed no one would remember, or that the son would not have his father's memory." "But you do remember," I said. "I do," he confirmed. "I was a teenager that summer. I saw the whole thing. I saw the map. I saw the look on her face when my father confronted her. It wasn't remorse. It was rage. Rage at being caught. He looked at me with a new understanding, a new sympathy. Now I understand her behavior at the pool," he said softly. "She's not just a difficult guest. She's a ghost. And she's terrified of anyone who might remember who she really is." The pieces all clicked into place. The obsession with the resort, the desperate need for approval, the fury at being challenged, the paranoia. It was the fear of a criminal returning to the scene of the crime. She wasn't just trying to prove she was rich, she was trying to prove she wasn't a thief. I thanked Mr. Harrison for his honesty. He simply nodded, a silent pact passing between us. He had given me the truth. Now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. For the rest of the day, I felt like I was moving through a dream. The world looked the same, but I knew a fundamental truth about it that I hadn't known before. I watched my mother across the dinner table that night, laughing at one of my father's jokes, a perfect picture of elegance and grace, but all I could see was a scared 19-year-old girl stuffing a stolen map into her locker. I saw a life built on a foundation of lies and fear, and I felt a strange mixture of disgust and, to my surprise, a sliver of pity. What a terrible way to live. But the pity did not last. The next morning, she cornered me while I was getting coffee in the lobby. She had apparently decided that the silent treatment was not working, and it was time for a new tactic: gaslighting. "Sarah, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I'm worried about you. You seem so tense, so angry all the time. This is supposed to be a relaxing vacation. You're ruining it for everyone with your moods." I just stared at her, the coffee cup warm in my hands. The audacity of it was breathtaking. "I'm not angry, Mother," I said calmly. "I'm just tired." "Tired of what, darling?" she asked, placing a hand on my arm. I flinched. "Tired of this beautiful trip I've provided for you? Tired of your lovely family?" "I'm tired of pretending," I said, my voice low. "I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of a game where I can never win because you are always changing the rules." Her eyes hardened. The fake concern vanished. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said coldly. "I have been nothing but generous to you, and you have been nothing but ungrateful. Perhaps, if you raised your children to be more disciplined, you wouldn't be so tired all the time." And just like that, any lingering pity I had for her was gone. She would never change. She would never see the truth. She would always, always make it about my failings, about my children's imperfections. She would use them as a shield to protect her own dark secrets. I looked at her, at this woman who had given birth to me, but had never truly been a mother to me. And I knew what I had to do. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't save her. But I could stop her. I could stop her from hurting my children. I could stop her from casting her long, dark shadow over my life. The vacation was ending in 2 days. We always had a big farewell dinner on the last night. That would be the time. That would be the place. I would not use the truth to destroy her, but I would use it to build a wall she could never cross again. The final day of the vacation arrived. I spent most of it with Mark and the kids, creating one last set of happy, noisy memories. We built a giant sandcastle on the beach, and I didn't shush them once when they shrieked with delight as the waves came in. I let them be children. I let them be free. I was storing up the sound of their joy, a talisman against the silence my mother craved. Mark knew something was going to happen that night. He didn't ask what. He just squeezed my hand and said, "I'm with you, whatever you decide to do." That evening, we all gathered in the resort's formal dining room. It was an elegant space with white tablecloths and glittering chandeliers. My mother was in her element. She had chosen the restaurant, of course. She was wearing a new dress, expensive jewelry, and a smile of serene satisfaction. She was the matriarch, the queen, surveying her domain. She had survived the week. In her mind, she had won. She had put the unfortunate business at the pool behind her and reestablished her authority. She began holding court, telling my father and Mark a long, boring story about a business acquaintance of hers. I let her talk. I let her build her stage and bask in her spotlight. I ate my salad, I drank my water, and I waited. I waited for the perfect moment. It came during a lull in the conversation, just after the main courses had been served. My mother was dabbing her lips with a napkin, a picture of refined grace. "Well," she said with a sigh of contentment, "it's been a wonderful trip. It's so important to return to places that hold special memories." That was it. That was my opening. I took a sip of water, my hand steady. "I agree," I said, my voice calm and clear. Everyone at the table looked at me. I hadn't spoken much all evening. In fact, I've been learning so much about the history of this place. It's fascinating. My mother's smile tightened. "Is it?" she said, her tone dismissive. "I find history rather dull." "Oh, I don't know," I said, leaning forward slightly. "I think it's all about who is telling the story. For example, Mother, you seem to know so much about this resort. You must have come here often when you were younger." She stiffened. "I've told you," she said, her voice sharp. "We admired it. Your grandfather had impeccable taste." "Right, that's the story," I said, nodding slowly. "But it's funny, I was speaking with Mr. Harrison again. He has such a wonderful memory. He mentioned he remembered you from a long time ago, from when his father, Charles Harrison, ran the place." Complete silence fell over the table. My father froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Mark put his hand on my knee under the table, a silent signal of support. My mother's face had gone pale. What are you implying? She stammered. He probably remembers me as a prominent guest from a local family. No, I said, my voice still quiet, still calm. I was not yelling. I was not accusing. I was simply stating facts. That's not what he said. He said he remembered you from the summer you worked here. I let the words hang in the air for a moment. In the dining room, my father gasped. He looked at my mother, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. Eleanor? He whispered. What is she talking about? My mother's face, which had been pale, was now flushed with a deep, furious red. She's lying, she hissed, her eyes blazing at me. She is a liar. She is making this up to humiliate me, to ruin this family. Am I? I asked softly. Am I lying, Mother, or are you? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was the loudest thing in the room. How dare you speak to me this way? She shrieked, her voice cracking. She was losing control, and she knew it. The mask was slipping, and the scared, angry girl from 50 years ago was showing through. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By inventing these vicious, disgusting fantasies? I took another calm sip of water. I looked at my father, whose face was a canvas of disbelief. I looked at Mark, who gave me a firm, encouraging nod. Then I looked back at my mother, whose entire world was crumbling around her. It's not a fantasy, Mother, I said. Mr. Harrison remembers everything. He remembers the uniform. He remembers the summer. He even remembers why you left so suddenly. This was the final blow. Her eyes widened in genuine terror. She knew exactly what I was talking about. The stolen map, the quiet disgrace, the threat that had hung over her for half a century. He told me it was a matter of dishonesty, I continued, my voice relentless, but even. Something about a collector's item from his father's office. He said his father was very kind. He could have called the police, but he didn't. He just made you promise you would never come back. My mother made a small, choking sound. She looked around the restaurant, her eyes wild with panic. She saw what I saw. Several nearby tables had fallen silent. People were watching us. She was the center of attention, just as she had been at the pool. But this time, it was not a performance she could control. This time, the story being told was the truth. Should we ask him to join us? I asked, delivering the final, devastating line. He's just over there, by the host stand. We could clear this all up right now. I gestured with my head toward the entrance of the restaurant. Mr. Aldi, Sir Harrison was indeed standing there, watching us. I had spoken to him earlier that day. I had told him what I was going to do. I had asked him if he would be willing to simply be visible during our dinner. He had agreed. He was not going to intervene, but his presence was my proof. It was the gun I was placing on the table. My mother followed my gaze. She saw him. She saw the calm, knowing look on his face. And in that moment, she broke. All the fight, all the rage, all the denial just evaporated. She visibly crumpled in her chair, shrinking into herself. She did not call my bluff. She did not scream or protest. She just stared down at her plate, her face ashen. The queen was dethroned. The fortress had been breached. The game was over. My father was staring at her, his mouth agape. Eleanor, he said again, his voice weak with shock. Is this true? All these years, you told me. He trailed off, the decades of lies apparently replaying in his mind. She didn't answer him. She couldn't. I looked at Mark. He gave my knee a final, firm squeeze. I had done it. I had not yelled. I had not made a scene. I had simply held up a mirror, and the reflection had destroyed her. I pushed my chair back from the table. Mark, can you please take the kids back to the room? I said. I think dinner is over. He nodded, quickly gathering our sleeping children from their chairs. As he left, I turned to my father. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Dad, I said quietly. He just shook his head, still looking at his wife, the stranger he had been married to for 40 years. I left them there in the silent, wreckage-strewn battlefield of their marriage. As I walked out of the restaurant, I passed Mr. Harrison. He met my eyes and gave me a single, solemn nod. It was not a nod of victory, but of understanding. He knew this was not about revenge. It was about survival. I walked out into the warm night air, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, completely free. The weight I had been carrying since birth, the weight of her expectations and her moods and her lies, was finally gone. I had not destroyed her. She had done that to herself, long ago. I had just turned on the light. The flight home was the quietest flight I have ever been on. My mother stared out the window, not speaking a word to anyone. My father sat beside her, looking old and defeated. The foundation of his life had been revealed to be sand, and he seemed to have no idea what to do. Mark and I sat with the children, reading them stories and playing quiet games. It felt like we were in our own separate bubble of peace, a bubble my mother's toxicity could no longer penetrate. When we landed, we said our goodbyes at the baggage claim. It was awkward and stiff. My father gave me a brief, hesitant hug. "We'll talk," he said, though we both knew we probably wouldn't, not for a long time. My mother didn't even look at me. She just grabbed her suitcase and walked away, a small, diminished figure. The powerful matriarch was gone, replaced by a lonely old woman. A few days later, my father called. His voice was strained. "Your mother is very upset, Sarah," he said. It was the same old script. Her feelings were the priority. Her pain was the only pain that mattered. But I was no longer playing my part. "Is she?" I asked, my voice neutral. "I imagine she is. It must be very upsetting to have a lifetime of lies exposed." "You were too harsh," he said, his voice pleading. "It was a long time ago. It didn't need to be brought up like that in public." "Didn't it?" I countered. "She publicly humiliated me and my children over a secret she was keeping. She made my family's joy a threat to her lies. I didn't bring it up to be harsh, Dad. I brought it up to protect my family, something you never did for me." He was silent on the other end of the line. I could hear his breathing. "That's not fair," he finally whispered. "No," I said, my voice hardening with a lifetime of suppressed anger. "What's not fair is that you stood by and watched her criticize me, belittle me, and manipulate me my entire life. You told me to be quiet. You told me not to rock the boat. You enabled her every step of the way. You have a choice to make, Dad. You can continue to live in her world of lies and secrets, or you can step into the truth. But my family and I, we are living in the truth from now on. The door to our world is open, but you can't bring her baggage with you." He didn't have an answer. We ended the call a few moments later. I knew I had probably broken my relationship with him too, but it was a relationship that had been built on appeasing her, on sacrificing my well-being for her comfort. It wasn't a real relationship at all. A week later, something even more surprising happened. My sister, Chloe, called me. Chloe had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She had spent the entire trip siding with my mother, rolling her eyes at my oversensitivity. I expected a phone call where she would scream at me for upsetting our mother, but that's not what happened. "Hi," she said, her voice small and uncertain. "Hi, Chloe," I replied, wary. There was a long pause. I never knew," she said finally. "About the resort, about any of it." "Neither did I until last week," I said. "She always made it seem like we came from so much more," Chloe said, her voice thick with emotion. "Like we were special. She told me stories about her childhood, about Granddad's business successes. Were they all lies?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Probably. The story she built was more important to her than the reality." "I feel like my whole life has been a lie," she whispered. The golden child's pedestal had crumbled. She was just as much a victim of our mother's manipulations as I was, just in a different way. I had been the scapegoat. She had been the trophy. But we were both just objects in our mother's story. "It wasn't your lie, Chloe," I said, and for the first time in years I felt a flicker of genuine connection to my sister. It was hers. We talked for a long time that day. It was the first real conversation we had ever had. Life has been different since that trip. Quieter, more peaceful. We don't go to family holidays anymore. My mother has made no attempt to contact me, and I have made no attempt to contact her. My father sends polite, impersonal birthday cards to the children. I hear through Chloe that my parents' marriage is strained, a hollowed-out thing held together by decades of habit. My mother apparently is consumed by bitterness. She tells people I am a monster who tried to destroy her. Some of her friends believe her. I don't care. The people who matter, my husband, my children, my sister, they know the truth. Sometimes I feel a pang of guilt. I wonder if there was a different way, a gentler way. But then I hear my children laughing in the backyard, their voices loud and free and unafraid. And I know I did the right thing. I did not set out to destroy my mother. I set out to build a boundary made of truth. And on my side of the boundary, there is honesty and joy and the beautiful, wonderful music of my children's laughter. She spent her entire life trying to prove that she belonged in a world of quiet, exclusive luxury. Now, she finally understands what it feels like to be on the outside of a world of love and truth. And that is a world she can never, ever enter again.